Hi, this is E.W. Claville, and this is the Claville Report. The AP curriculum in African American Studies and the assault on teaching Black history. If you've seen the news, of course, this is Black History Month, and of course, during the time of Black History Month, we look at the story more in depth of Black Americans and Black people that have helped to make and shape this country. And during this time period of February, we're able to see something and understand more intently, more in depth of the triumphs and the struggles and the tragedy of the Black experience here in America. One thing that we talk about when we look at the Black experience here in America is one that is very complicated. It's also one that is extremely complex, but it's one that is a story of strength, a story of sorrow, a story of ups, a story of downs, a story of struggle, but also a struggle of success. Now, with any story, you have a situation where individuals, when you go through a storm or you go through struggles, obviously you have the person that's going through it, and you also have the person that's causing the struggle. Here in the United States of America, it is no secret whatsoever that the primary struggle of Black people, more specifically African Americans in this country, is the legacy of slavery. We're talking America has been around a little bit over 400 years. Of that 400 years, Black people were enslaved over 246 years of that. And then Black people were subjected to what's called Jim Crow segregation for another 100 years. So in essence, when you take a look at the Black experience itself in the United States of America is 5/8. 5/8. If you look at American eights, right? 5/8 of our existence was absolute enslavement. That means zero opportunity to create your own American dream. As a matter of fact, it was an absolute nightmare for our ancestors. Of course, throughout history, we hear about the benevolent slave owner and how Blacks were treated very nicely. They ate well and clothed well and things of that nature. Well, when you peel back history, that's an absolute lie. We know that the Daughters of the Confederacy worked extra hard to ensure that the story of slavery was whitewashed. And a lot of the horrors of slavery were glossed over. And a lot of it tried to be erased from history. But of course, if you go into the Library of Congress, all of the records and things that we know, which is our nation's archive, National Archives, are there. Letters, stories, records, slave ship records, the whole nine is there. But when we take a look at that 250 years, of course, we're off by about 4 years when you look at the start of official slavery here in America, at 1619 to the end of the Civil War, 1865. But if you're looking at even numbers, just to make it simpler for this discussion, for those 250 years, if you were Black, you had zero rights, zero. Okay? Not one right, not two, but zero. You were literally owned by another human being. It is what it is. It happened. Not only that, but you worked from sun up to sundown. That means that you were working a minimum of 10 hours a day in the fields or in the house, whatever the case may be. And those individuals that were tasked with working in the house, you were on call 24/7. 24/7. That means you had to tend to the needs of the guests, not just the owner of the home, the slave owners, but also the guests. You had to be at their beck and will. You had to be there at their beck and call and bow down to their will. We also know that on these different plantations across the country, that massive amount of wealth was created through agriculture. Uh, Whatever the case may be, they had labor that, of course, these slave owners paid for the initial cost of buying these human beings at slave auctions on the slave block, where these our ancestors and citizens, fellow citizens of our country, were dehumanized, stripped down, butt naked on a slave block and traded back and forth. We saw where children, boys and girls, families, women and men were stripped apart from each other and sold separately. So you could come over together, you could have been together on the west coast of Africa, you could have been on ships together as families, but when you got to the different slave ports, at that point, you were then separated. Imagine seeing your brother, your sister, and then all of a sudden you make a stop on the ship, you're pulled away, and you never, ever see them again. Imagine having a wife or a husband in your country, or even having a wife or husband at the plantation. Imagine someone violating your wife or husband. Imagine that person being stripped away from you and sold to another plantation. Imagine that. That's the horror of our ancestors. That is the legacy of our slavery, of our time here in this slavery. That's the true story. It's absolutely terrible. It's horrible. It is the worst example of one human treating another human. It is an absolute tragedy. It is terrible. But that's the story that, take a look at what is taught in our schools that we don't want to be taught. Because anytime there's a struggle, anytime there is an obstacle that you have to overcome, there's a person going through the struggle and the person that creates the struggle. There's a system that is enduring the horrors, and there's a system that's creating the circumstances around the horrors that are created. And that is the story that, unfortunately, America does not want to tell. But in order for us to truly become united and truly become one, you got to tell the good and you got to tell the bad. Now, imagine if you're in a classroom, and I get it, I understand it. Imagine you're in a classroom and you're in an integrated school. Most schools are integrated now. And you have your white kids there, you have black kids there, and you're telling this story. You're showing the pictures of black people being flogged and hit with whips. And you see the creation of mixed race children through rape and through a way of the violating of different slave women or women during that time period. You see the toil and the struggle that people have from working from sun up to sundown. Imagine working on a cotton plantation. You have to get 150 pounds of cotton a day. Imagine that, 150 pounds of cotton. Now, I buy cotton balls at the store. Cotton balls don't weigh that much, okay? Imagine peeling back the thorns in order to secure the cotton from the plant. Imagine that. Imagine the pricks in your finger. Imagine your feet. Imagine fighting the snakes. And imagine not receiving the proper nourishment that your body needs. Imagine toiling in the heat. Imagine you making a mistake, or maybe the supervisor of the slaves at that time having a bad day and they take it out on you, right? Who are you going to call? You can't call the local counselor. You can't call the local EEOC office. You can't call the local sheriff or police. You can't file a claim. You can't go to the court. You got to take it. You got to take it. And that's what our people did. We took it. We took it on our backs. We took it through our family legacy. We took it for this country. But then even during that time period, we had great Americans like Frederick Douglass that worked tirelessly behind the scenes and in front of the scenes, advising presidents, stakeholders to say, listen, this is what we need to help our people. This is what our people can contribute to this country. We love this country. It's ours too. We built it. We slaved and toiled. We tilled the ground. We harvested the crops for you to sell, for you to make your fortune. And from there, He said, we want to fight for this country. So during the time of the Civil War, he said, listen, if we have to prove once more that we are a part of this country, let us fight in the war. So we saw black soldiers in both the Union and the Confederate side that fought valiantly for this country. Of course, the Union had a much larger cadre of soldiers that fought, African-American soldiers, black soldiers. And we saw movies like Glory that was created, Oscar-winning performances, like Denzel Washington, Morgan Freeman, and others, that show the history of us fighting and bleeding for a country that did not want us at all. They simply want us to bleed or get what we call blood out of a turnip and then simply die. We saw that. And we proved ourselves over and over again. Civil War, World War II, World War I and II. We see it over and over again, how we as African Americans create the narrative to prove ourselves. But we see over and over again as African Americans, our story not willing to be told. When we fast forward, after that terrible 250 years, a quarter of a millennium, okay? A quarter of 1,000 years, you had zero rights, zero say, you could build zero wealth, period. You were subject to the will and the horrors of slavery and all that it was. That's our legacy. And then you take the 100 years. Well, between that, you had a time of Reconstruction. I'll talk about that in a minute. But then you take that 100 years of segregation. That means you're not enslaved, but we're going to entrap you and bottle you in to these little segments of society where you simply cannot work to achieve the American dream as we're told you can in this country. We're going to block you. Okay? Yeah, you can eat at the restaurant, but you got to go to the back. We're going to block you. Yeah, you can drink out of the fountain, but you got to drink out of the black side of the fountain, which for the most part was one that was subpar, maybe one that did not work. We're going to block you. Yeah, you can work for this company, but you can only be a custodian. Yeah, we're going to block you. Yeah, you can actually own your business, but you can't get a business loan because we're going to redline you from banks and say that you can't own any property outside of this area of our city. We're going to block you. But even through that blocking, even through all of that, we have people like Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and others, Fannie Lou Hamer, others that said, listen, I'm tired, sick and tired of being sick and tired. We had Dr. King that said, listen, though you slay me, I will still love you. Though you call me out of my name, though you bomb our churches, we'll still love you. When the 4 girls were bombed in the church in Alabama, you know, to me, that is a situation or part of history that really broke my heart because personally, I can't see children suffer. It just breaks my heart to see that. But still through that, we said we love you. Even through the massacre in modern times, the massacre of the Mother Church in South Carolina, Mother Emanuel, where a white male came into the church. And he was invited in and comforted and sat through Bible study, the entire Bible study. And during dismissal, he got up and murdered everybody in that church. Reloaded, killing everybody. By the way, we've had many incidences in the past where we had white males with guns that shot and killed people. Of course, in Minnesota, it happened recently. And even though we know these individuals were killing people, they were strapped, they were armed, they still ended up with our police not killing them. So when we talk about policing and dangers, we know that it can be done. You can actually take someone into custody without killing them, especially people that actually have guns. But when you look at this history, it's a complex history. It's a history, especially during the time of Reconstruction, which I think is the most productive time of our country's history, where we had African Americans in the legislature that created opportunities, not just for Black people, but for all people. When we take a look at the first civil rights legislation after the Civil War, when we take a look at the second set of civil rights legislation in the 60s, These laws were created to help all people, not just black people. When you take a look at the tragedy, the struggles of the black experience, and you couple that with what we as black people have shown this country and the world, that though you slay me, we will still love you, work for the betterment of this country, and do everything that we know to show our patriotism. How can you deny that we too are Americans and our history should be taught? Yes, it's a terrible history at the hands of white Americans, period. It is what it is. But our actions show that you have nothing to fear, but you have an opportunity to show the same love that we've shown those that have oppressed, those that have denied us, those that work to destroy us. Though you slay us, we will still love you. This is the story of Black America. This is the love that Christ showed all of us. This is true humanity in action. This is E.W. Claville. This is the Claville Report. And to all of you, happy Black History Month.